I'm exhausted. What shall we talk about today? I feel like we should talk about reliving your childhood, even if your childhood is not good. I feel you should find a way to figure out like when your childhood felt good. And that probably quite concerning for some people if they have really bad traumatic childhood. But I think it's important to find nuggets from childhood. If it's not raw, if it's not too triggering, of course, like you have to put yourself first. But I think when people are an adult, we tend to forget the joy of childhood and we tend to forget like the simplest thing. And I think we need to remember that every now and then because I think when the pleasure that arrives from little things when we were kids feel like it's so innocent, it doesn't have a lot of baggage attached to it. Even when you are having a crush on somebody, for example, when you're in middle school. I remember when I was middle school, I used to have this crush onto um, this boy, and then it wasn't too long after that. Probably I remember maybe only under 10 years, even like after 10, like just under 10 years from the moment where I had a crush on this boy, I realized that we were moving at a very different phase of life because under 10 years I was in middle school, he was only like 4 years older, and but by 10 years later he already had a kid, and his kid was like, I don't know, what was it, like his kid was already like at least 2 years old or something. And I was nowhere to be ready to have kids. Like even as a 41 years old, I still haven't had kids. He's probably a grandpa right now because his kid is like what should be 21 now, 22, and I'm just still a kid. So, some people really, and I feel like when I remember those times when I was just crushing on him, he was just like an older um, boy in the same building of our school, and it was fun because I just like take lunch naps, lunchtime naps, and just like imagine if I go out with him, if he gives me attention. I used to go to church and just walk past his house, and I was like, oh, just like always wishing that he's there. I know, like in the neurodivergent world, in autistic world, it's called limerance, and PTSD world also. Oh, a bunch of therapy lingo there. And I do have that. I think I still do have that. But I think as I grow older, okay, so this is the topic of the video, 3 minutes in limerence. Limerence is basically when you are holding on to this idea in your head and you kind of wish for it to come true, but it's actually not really real. It's like, it's just like you just want it to be real in your head and you kind of hold on to it and you kind of milk it as much as possible in your head, and you think that something is there but it really isn't at the end of the day. And i think my I think that's a good topic to talk about because I think my not my wake up moment, but I think my there was a moment when I was talking to this girl, to this woman, basically about 9 years older than me, when I was in my early 30s. And she was showing that limerence experience quite obviously in front of me. And when I'm not the person who's going through the experience, it's really easy to see it on another person, but I never seen it on another person until that time. And then I realized, like, oh, what I'm doing is actually it's very not real. It's extremely just in my head, and it's not healthy. Because this lady was saying like, oh yeah, there's a connection between me and this Japanese guy that I was seeing. And then I asked her questions like, when was the last time you talked to this person? Oh, I think 7 years ago. But so I'm like, so do you communicate at all? Like, do you communicate often, like via emails or via text messages? And so I was just like asking questions like curiously because it was on topic. And she was like, no, but we have a connection. He knows what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling. But I'm like, of course, I was judging at this point. But I realized like, oh, that was what I was doing. Like I was kind of like assuming that the other person would know what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, that I might have, we might have connection that is beyond the physical world, and we're connecting and talking to each other telepathically. I know I just sound really like an insane person. But oh, I never done anything to the extent of like illegality. Maybe something dodgy when I was still in my 20s, but no, don't worry. I grew up. I grew up. My nervous system is kind of healing, maybe half healed, so I'm okay. But when you are dysregulated, when you are so out of whack, and it's there. I think it's a coping mechanism with the way your life is so disorganized and in chaos. Because I remember, but I think like by the time I was in my mid 20s, I was slowly aware of the limerance, meaning I was slowly aware that I'm obsessed with certain people, like in fangirling type, but to in real life, which is not okay. But back like when I was a teenager, I didn't really realize the seriousness of it and the way it was so inappropriate. Because I always imagine things like, oh, if this person is good looking, that they're meant to be chased, they're meant to be idolized. That's just what it is. They should get used to it, they should get used to women harassing them because they're good looking. That's what we do. I guess like my mindset was already fangirl mindset back then, but it doesn't mean that I want to like. But I think like that kind of feeling kind of just developed into inappropriate territory by the time I was in my university years. I remember there was this model that was in our class basically, and I was so obsessed with him. I would, because I have the pattern recognition skills, I would suddenly realize like what time he would be in certain situation, like in certain places after his class. I would, at first it was definitely a coincidence because I would just like walking past and I would notice them being there. But after a while, I kind of learned the pattern and I realized, oh, if I go to uni at this time, I would definitely bump into him in this place because he probably would just come out from his lectures. It got to the point where I basically stalked him, basically. And, but I never really got into deep because I think, like with Limerence, especially, I was in my delusional fantasy world where I just felt like, oh, I want them to talk to me first. This dude probably doesn't know I exist. I swear this happened like 20 years ago and I've changed. My nervous system is healed somewhat, so I'm no longer doing this. Um, and I remember like previous years to this, I would be obsessed so much. I would think that we had a connection, we had a certain bond that could not be broken. But of course, like as I grew up, I totally understand that things are not like that. And I think I remember telling myself, like I think my identity is split slowly but surely. And I remember telling myself, it's been 3 years since we saw that guy. We can't just still have feelings for this guy. And I think I basically told this childish version of myself inside my head, dude, you drop it already. It's been 3 years. And I also told myself the same part of myself, like, it's 3 years. Like, in 2 more years, we probably will forget about this guy and forget that we had feelings for him. I think by this stage, I was already going into my crisis era. My nervous system was basically tanking, but I think there is a maturity that was developing as well. So I was like telling myself, this will pass. Your feelings is not real. I think that voice is starting to come up, and then it started kind of save me from, hopefully, like back then was a potential, probably a career stalker like career that is not recommended. The sesang route. If you're a K-pop girly, you know what it is. Sesang is basically a fanatic fangirl that is intrusive to their idol's life. They would go into their idols' hotel rooms, or find out the idols' um, phone number and message them and trying to, engage in personal conversations. It's very delusional. Like, I was going down that route, but I think my obsession with trying to make money and my stress about not having a job or not having money probably saved me from that route. Because it had to force me into, like, the survival mode route, rather than, like, if I probably didn't have any, like, money issues. I probably would spend a lot of my time and energy going down the, pursuing, or like pursuing men that are not unavailable, or the ones that I thought in my head as, oh, they're so good looking, they have a good butt, they're so smart, like down that idolizing people, like that sesang route. Luckily I didn't. That didn't really stop. Like, I kind of just try to avoid men after that. I still obsess about them though. Like, I still obsess when like an idol, like fangirl obsession. But of course, like, as I grew older, that limit and that boundaries is established. It becomes more and more solid. Like, I'm so aware that these are just that, like, an idol type of interaction. It's there to be entertaining. It's there to be fun. It's not there to intrude into your private life and their private life. Like, it's not necessary. So, by the time I'm in my 30s, I definitely, like, in the healthy territory. But the limerence is still there. The limerence of the fantasy of a future, a fantasy of us being together, like whoever it is, like whoever your idol is at the moment. And it kind of changed, like from an idol point of, like from an idol position, like where I used to like Shinhwa, which I still do, which is like a K-pop idol in the early 2000s. So this is like, I think Jungkook from BTS really like Shinhwa. I think I saw interview between Jungkook and uh, Lee Min-woo, which is part of the Shinhwa's member, and Jungkook said, like, I was born in '97, and Lee Min-woo said Shinhwa's debuted in '97. That was funny. Um, I think, like, it transitioned from someone on screen to someone like maybe closer to home, and I felt like that's also a bit dangerous. But because the boundaries was already up, and I think like sanity was forming a lot more, I kind of can differentiate between reality and fantasy. And even though I still have the fantasy of, going into a relationship, being lovey-dovey, I'm kind of using that kind of daydreaming as an escape deliberately rather than outside my control. So I'm using it more as a tool for entertainment for myself rather than, as as an unconscious activity that is not controllable in my head. So that's my experience with limerence, and I know that sounds very twisty, and probably I should not admit that in real life, but maybe it will shine a little bit of hope for people who are still in that particular situation. I guess like the experience of listening to another person going through limerence, like, basically listening to them talking about it really brought me to my sense. It's like, so have you talked to them? Like, because I was basically like reminding myself as well, because I'm fully aware that my friends were probably looking at me as if that this girl is nuts and this girl is delusional, but I wasn't like caring about it. It wasn't until I was being presented with my friend's position of basically staring at at this other person going through the limerence experience that I realized, like, oh, my friend is really nice. My friends are nice. They haven't really confronted me about this. They're just gonna put up with it. And I'm like, oh, maybe they just didn't care enough to, basically snap me out of it. Um, but it wasn't until I was presented with a situation where I was basically asking this person like questions like, so have you talked to this guy? Have you met this guy yet? And I'm like, when was the last time you talked to this guy? How do you know that you have a connection if you don't talk to this guy? I was asking a bunch of questions to this girl. Um, but yeah, so I was like, okay, oh my god, is that how my friend sees me? So yeah, so that's my journey with limerence. I think I still do, but I feel like it's dying now. I feel like it's been dead for a good 5 years now. The last time I had it, it was with with a certain community members that I was a part of maybe 6 years ago. But I haven't really. It took about, I think the limerence experience was like about 4 years, and it was good because it got me out of, oh no, it made me hang on to a very bad situation, like the starvation period, the dysregulation, the whole bunch of stuff. So I was like really grateful that that kind of fantasy um, world exists in my brain, because otherwise I probably would not have survived that period. So I was really grateful, but it kind of just drifted off. Like people kind of just dispersed, and life kind of take over. I guess like I am still have a little bit of sanity left in me to kind of steer myself into the real world again. And one of the downside is, of course, the real world now feels a bit bland, a bit boring. It doesn't feel like colorful anymore, because when you're in limerence, the emotional intensity is really strong, and it just gives you that really high feeling and just really squeeze a lot of emotional juices. So it's good. Like, but I don't haven't felt it again. Like maybe like for the past 6 years. So which is not a bad thing, because I think stability is also very underrated for a lot of things, but I think it's highly important. We need stability. I prefer to have a boring life and stable life than exciting and completely unpredictable. But anyway, that's enough of my rant today. I will see you in the next video. My name is Valerie. Every 7 p.m. on Wednesday, I will talk here and just talk about random stuff. I will see you guys next week. And uh, if you want to check out my links in the description box below, you can do that and see my other works on the internet. We'll see you guys later. Bye, everyone.